gets old. I like to think that I'm not your ordinary hitman. I'm not a drug-abled dimwit, an amateur who gets caught. I'm an imaginative and approach my work as a true professional. If I may be so bold, I'm a master in the art of murder for hire. You won't see me work in a museum or an art gallery. You'll find it in the files of unsolved homicide cases. If I have anything to do with it, my art will remain anonymous. My clients are rich guys who cheated on their wives and find themselves up to their eyeballs in divorce attorneys. Some of these men are desperate to protect their wealth from women that they consider greedy and undeserving. Wives they have come to hate and fear. They entertain thoughts of violent death. A few of them even harbor fantasies of torture and humiliation. They are consumed by hate and are easy to manipulate. These larger-than-life psychopaths, men who had attracted their wives with their wealth and bravado, are no longer in control of their fates or their emotions. My clients, they don't find me. I find them. I get leads from newspaper gossip columns and stories in the tabloids. Each of my jobs are different, so I use various ploys and techniques to enter my future client's life. This is where I have to be careful. I make sure I'm not photographed with the guy. I always use a fake name. I make sure that I employ a variety of disguises. Fingerprints are never a problem because I've never been arrested. I also stay clear of my target's friends and their associates. When I'm with him, which is always in private, I never bring up the subject of his wife or the divorce, at least not directly. I wait for him to suggest what I hope he'll suggest and act like a little shocked when he does. But I say, okay, I'll do it. I'll take the risk, but it won't be cheap. My demands are simple and they're firm. His wife's death will cost $50,000 cash up front. That is, the response is usually the same. That's too much. No way. I expect this reaction. These men didn't get rich by being generous now. So I don't budge. And I remind Mr. Moneybags that if he doesn't cough up the dough, he'll lose half his estate. So take it or leave it. He usually takes it. Nothing is written on paper. I tell him I don't want hand-drawn maps, phone numbers, descriptions, license plate numbers, things like that. In this business, contracts are oral, and there can be no physical evidence. At a remote spot of my choosing, we sit in his car. He hands me the bills, often in a paper bag. Before he asks me, "What are you going to do it? Will you make it look like an accident?" That's when I shoot a bullet in his ear. Always the head, because there's little bleeding, because I don't like blood. For the gun, it's a piece that was once owned by a deceased mugger. That's a story for another time, folks. I find a river or a lake. Like I say, no physical evidence. You asked me why I kill a man who hired me. I kill the man who hired me because it makes no sense to kill his wife. If I kill her, the police will suspect him, and he could roll over on me. Sometimes, the cops actually suspect the wife of killing my client. The investigation, of course, dies on the vine, and the murder disappears into the books as an unsolved mystery. And by then, I'm working on my next project. My definition of a serial killer. But I don't see myself in that light. Those men are psychopaths. I don't take a person's life for sex or excitement or some kind of physical compulsion. I do it for a reason, and that reason is money. I don't have to kill, but I choose to kill. Rather than a psychopathic killer, I'm called a professional killer. That's a big difference, at least in my mind. I limit myself to about 1 or 2 jobs a year. Once I had a dry spell, and I went 2 years without killing anyone. I don't need much money. I'm single. I lease a cheap car. I wear J.C. Penney clothes. And I rent a small apartment in working class neighborhoods. Occasionally, when I'm impersonating a businessman, I'll spring for a couple of relatively expensive suits. I once bought a briefcase. I don't live in one place too long, and I stay out of trouble. I avoid booze. I don't gamble. I don't use drugs, or have romantic relationships with demanding or unstable women. I don't patronize banks or use credit cards. I'm tight-lipped, keep to myself, and spend a lot of time in the public library reading newspapers and tabloids. I like tabloids. Scandal journalists know how to find dirt on people. They have no shame and are very good writers. I spend a lot of time in libraries because these places are quiet and no one pays attention to you. In a way, I don't even exist. The murder cops don't have a chance at finding me because they're chasing a ghost. I don't require myself to hate the men I kill. I'm indifferent. But Bradford Littlesmith, a former carpet salesman who somehow made it big in real estate, was different. I didn't like this guy. He reminded me of the kid in high school who bullied me until I decided I had enough. Come graduation day, the cops were still looking for the kid. They never found him. You know what? After that, I didn't need the career counselor to guide me into my future profession. Although, on my vocational aptitude test, I scored high as a police officer. Eventually, Mr. Littlesmith came around to discussing his wife's untimely, or for him, timely demise. While at that point, he was probably fantasizing more than planning. I informed him that there was no such thing as a professional contract killer. These men, they only existed in the movies or in books. In real life, so-called hitmen were drug-addled amateurs who got caught and immediately implicated the people who hired them. I also pointed out that hitman didn't advertise in the yellow pages. Murder for hire masterminds also exposed themselves when they solicited people for the hit, and often ended up contracting with an undercover cop. Littlesmith asked me how I came to know so much about murder for hire. I told him I spent a few years in federal prison for a white collar crime, and it was there of sudden passing came up. My future client and I were having a drink at the bar in a fancy downtown hotel. I could tell he was well known there. I was posing as a potential investor in one of his real estate ventures. As I was about to steer the conversation to his wife, Rita, she entered the bar. This I had not expected. Little Smith saw her coming and said, "Oh boy, here we go." From the look on Rita's face, it was obvious she had not come for a friendly drink with her husband. Rita looked very angry, and she made no effort to hide it from anyone. Rita was a lot younger than her husband, and even though she had gained a few pounds since her glory days, she wasn't bad looking at all. I think she was his second, maybe his third wife. They had been married 3 years, and they were childless. He had a son from a previous marriage. I think Rita had worked for him before they ever got hitched. This Rita, I'll tell you, she had one hell of a temper, and a colorful vocabulary to match it. The thought crossed my mind that she might kill Little Smith before I even had the chance. This was the kind of out-of-control situation that I always tried to avoid. Yet there I was, right in the middle of this domestic dispute, carried out right in public. Climbing off the stool, I overheard the bartender talking on the phone to a police dispatcher. Just as I approached the door, Rita screamed, "You son of a bitch, I'm gonna kill you." Everyone in that bar heard it. This was not good for me. The next day I checked the papers, and I found no news of that hotel bar dust-up. Fortunately, no one even went to jail. But I'll tell you, dozens of people heard Rita Little Smith threaten her husband. That was the man I planned on murdering. She threatened to kill him. This worried me. I was worried that her inability to control herself might end up causing her trouble. After I took out her husband, Rita could end up under very suspicious lines for his murder. Homicide cops were particular in picking their suspects, and once they had someone they liked, they were bothered by petty things such as exculpatory evidence. Anger had made Rita temporarily stupid. Maybe I was too with my determination to go forward with the hit, but I'd invested too much time to back out now. I had always been lucky. Had my luck finally ran out? If it did, I'd have to reconsider my future in this business. But for now, I had a job to do still. A few days after the bar scene, I called Little Smith from a payphone, and I told him we had to talk. We met later that day in a Kmart parking lot. I often wonder how many murders are plotted right outside a Kmart. Little Smith sat behind the wheel of his Cadillac and looked rattled and said to me, "She's gotta go. That bitch threatened to kill me, and she just might do it. Do you know someone? Like we talked about. Can you give me a name of somebody that'll help kill my wife?" I looked at Little Smith and I said, "I'll do it." He said, "What?" I said, "I'll kill her for you." He said, "You? I thought you were in real estate." I said, "Little Smith, do you want it done or not?" He said, "Okay, but how much?" I said, $50,000. He's like, "You gotta be kidding me. I'm not paying for that." I told him, "Well then, how about you do it yourself? And if you do, you better hope I keep my mouth shut." Man, his face turned all different kinds of color, and he was like, "Who in the hell are you?" I said to him, solve your problem for $50,000. He looked at me and he said, how about I give you 5 up front and I'll give you the rest after it's done? I said, if you want it done, you'll give me 50. I don't believe in down payments, not in this business. He said, no deal. I reached for the door handle and I said to him, good luck. He said, wait, give me a name. I said, can't help you there. How about you say hello to Rita for me? He looked at me and said, you bastard. All right, but you better not screw this up. When will you do this? I said, tomorrow we'll do it. And then we agreed to meet at a secluded spot, a place not far from a lake. And I expect cash, all 50,000 or no deal. He agreed to this, and we parted ways. The next day, when I climbed into Little Smith's caddy, he seemed very upbeat, even excited over the prospect of his wife's impending death. He wanted to chat with me, but I didn't want small talk. I just wanted his damn money. He handed me the bag of money, and I counted it. All 50,000. It was all there. This is when I distracted him. When he wasn't paying attention, I slipped in a pair of earbuds and bang! Shot him right in his head. Job done. After I tossed that revolver in the lake, I drove home. Normally at this point I felt relieved and satisfied, but this time I wasn't feeling that. I was thinking about Rita and the possibility that Bradford Little Smith murder might not slip quietly into the unsolved mystery files. A week after I dispatched Middle Little Smith, I got some bad news. It was all in the papers. A spokesperson with the district attorney's office had a press conference on the steps of the courthouse to announce that Rita Little Smith had been charged with the murder of her estranged husband. She was currently incarcerated in the city lockup because she was a flight risk, and the judge had denied her bail. When pressed by reporters to lay out the case against Rita, the prosecution's mouthpiece admitted they had no confession, no eyewitness to the crime, no physical evidence connecting her to the murder, and as of yet, no murder weapon. But she had motive, and a few days prior to allegedly firing a .38 caliber slug into her husband's right ear, she had threatened to kill him. But they had more. Evidence that would send her away for life. Rita had confided to her cellmate that she had lured her husband to the place of his death under the pretext she would consent to the divorce for a small fraction of his estate. After she shot him, she tossed the gun out of the car window somewhere in the city. By now it was probably in the hands of a street thug. I wasn't surprised by this at all. When a prosecutor has a good murder suspect, but not enough evidence to convict, the jailhouse snitch comes slithering out of the woodwork. Rita's informant, in return for her lie, probably received a get-out-of-jail card and a bag of evidence room crack. Rita was in trouble, and maybe I was too. The moment Rita came storming into the hotel bar, I should have walked away from that job. Maybe I'd actually lost my touch in this business. As long as Bradford Little Smith's murder remained an open case, I couldn't move forward. I couldn't put the hit behind me. Without the jailhouse informant, the prosecutor didn't have a case. That meant this snitch, whoever she was, would have to go. And that meant I had some more work to do. I thought to myself, once I cleaned up Little Smith's mess, I retired from this business. This was not a business for a guy who'd run out of luck and self-confidence. Before I contemplated my new life, I'd identify the snitch and take care of the problem. Good thing I read the tabloids because there was a hooker witness in Little Smith's murder. The reporter must have slipped the jailer a few bucks, found the informant, and bought her story. Some of these tabloid guys were better detectives than the detectives. A lot better. The photograph showed a tall, slender, black woman in her 40s. The bright yellow hair and a rose tattoo on her neck would make her an easy spot. She called herself Beverly. That was her trick name. And she lived in a downtown flophouse called the Regis Arms Hotel. Her husband, he was a former track star, had run off. That's when she took to the streets. That's how she survived. All these gals had a sad story. It helped in court. The tabloid reporter had done most of my work. I'd cruise around the Regis Arms until I found a black stick of a woman with bleached hair. The sooner I got her into my car, the better. The cops would not be happy about their snitch going public. They'd want to reel her in before Rita's attorney got hold of her and offered a better deal. It didn't take me long to roll up on Beverly. There she was, by herself, leaning against the front of a closed tattoo shop. Her yellow hair glistened under the street light, and I pulled up alongside the curb and rolled down my front passenger window. She saw me, but she didn't move. Maybe she thought I was a cop. She finally dropped her cigarette. She straightened off that wall, and she walked stiffly towards the car with her high heels clicking on the pavement. No one was around, and the traffic was very light in the area. Lucky for me, not lucky for her. Beverly bent over and looked in. The headlights from an approaching car lit up her face. This woman was already dead. I would be just making it official. She said to me, "What can Mama do for you?" She asked me this without a trace of humanity. Her phony little smile revealed a chipped front tooth. I said, "Get in." Tried to make it sound like an invitation more than a demand. I returned her fake smile with a fake smile of my own. She said to me, "Slow down. This girl needs to see some money." I said, "How much?" She said, "Well, that depends on what you want, sweetie." I said, "I just want the mouth." She said, "Oh, that'll be 50 just for you." I held up a bundle of bills. She climbed her ass in. She said, "Where are we going?" I said, "Not far." And you know what happened? And after, I had planned to take a train to Miami, but at the last minute decided to fly, even though I hated the inside of a plane full of sweaty-ass people in a hurry to get somewhere. Being trapped in a plane felt like being swallowed by a snake. To make it bearable, I bought a first-class ticket. In first class, they were paid to treat you a little better than the luggage. I wore my JCPenney sports coat and one of the 2 trousers that came with it. When the steward had asked if I wanted a drink, I ordered a Coke to go along with my peanuts. Everything I owned fit into a pair of suitcases. I had my life savings, $150,000 packed inside a money belt. Not much for 15 years of professional killing, but enough for a new start. The moment I walked out of the terminal, I was hit by a blast of oppressive heat. I heard someone yelling, and when my eyes adjusted to the sun, I saw an elderly woman bawling out a Hispanic cab driver who looked bewildered. The chunky, bluish-haired lady in the yellow leisure suit was giving the poor taxi driver all types of hell. Her husband, a pot-bellied man stuffed into a pink pullover shirt and wearing a white acorn cap and lime green trousers, flared at the bottom. He looked embarrassed. The little fellow stood next to a giant golf bag. I could not imagine this man hitting a golf ball. Actually, I couldn't even imagine him doing anything but stand in the boiling sun, watching his wife make a damn fool of herself. He and the missus had probably returned from visiting their children up north. I'm sure the kids were happy that Mom and Dad were back in Florida. Right off the bat, I sensed there was something profoundly wrong with this place. I couldn't put my finger on it, one way or the other, but it just didn't feel right. I didn't belong in this town. What would I do in this heat? Play golf with an old guy in pink news tabloid, and there it was. Wife glues her husband to a toilet seat. There we go. My future client. I guess the ghost is back. So that's my story. Hope you enjoyed it. I really like that story. I'm sure that story could go on and on and on and get better and better and better. Could be a novel or a damn movie. But I very much enjoyed it. With that being said, I hope you did very much. And I will be back soon to tell you an actual true crime story. I've got 3 of them that I'm prepared to present. And I just wanted to put this out because I thought it was entertaining. Thank you very much for listening.